Porokami is a boy who is starting his second year of high school today. But this is no ordinary story. This body is not inhabited by a schoolboy, but by a true demon prince, a creature from another world, unlike ordinary people. Porokami is a demon over 2,000 years old, but he looks like a child. He has to restrain himself so as not to give himself away. He tried to calm himself down. It was one thing to be afraid of public speaking, but if he lost control, his true colors would show. Meanwhile, the teacher introduced a new student, and Poro almost fainted from excitement. He finally made his dream come true. He got to Japan, the land of the rising sun. But if everything goes wrong on the first day, he will have to return to the terrible world of demons. In the demonic world, there is only one rule: power. Monsters destroy each other to rise in the rankings. There is only one goal for demons: to become stronger. Only in this way can they write their name on the list of the powerful. Daily battles and killings are commonplace, as each victory raises their rank and adds glory. There is no justice or humanity in that world, only endless blood and struggle. But there was one who did not accept this. The demon prince Poro couldn't take it anymore. With tears in his eyes, he shouted that he hated everything around him. Even though he was ranked first in the power rankings, for 2,000 years he had had to fight every day. Although he despised violence, monsters forced him to use force again and again. After a year, the Demon King was to retire, and the first place in the ranking automatically became the successor. In this world, no one could escape the fate of the ranking. The only way to avoid this was death. But Poro wasn't going to die or kill himself. He was looking for another way out. He didn't understand why things had to be this way. Every time he went out to buy manga, he was attacked by hundreds of freaks, eager to climb the rankings. In this world, the title of prince is worthless without power. The Father King rejoiced in his son's power, but Poro did not dream of being a tyrant. His happiness is silence, and reading his favorite manga of the Sanitaris genre. Often he didn't even notice how the next manga turned out to be a monster that wanted to kill him. Problems appeared one after another. Those who watched him only smiled, saying he was as miserable as ever. They mocked the fact that the most powerful demon looked so miserable. A demon named Paradise turned to Poro, declaring that he would definitely defeat him this time. His partner Fu supported him. They dreamed of becoming great demon kings. Poro was shocked. He had asked them to stop 1,000 times, but they lost patience and ordered him to simply die. Eventually, the demons lost consciousness, then apologized. Poro asked them to just stay out of his sight. His companions suggested that it was because he had not yet dealt a fatal blow. But Poro did not want to be a butcher. He knew that would only create more monsters. The demon world was ruled by only cruel creatures obsessed with violence, and Poro came to hate this place to the core. His life was one of utter despair. The only refuge for his weary heart was his little oasis, the world of people. Poro talked about the human world he sometimes visited. He opened the door to his room and found himself amidst a familiar mess. He saw beauty in this chaos. His heart was filled with admiration. The human world seemed to him a true miracle. Nowadays, human culture was becoming more accessible even in the demonic world. Their creativity was amazing. Yesterday's order had already arrived. It was exciting. For a demon raised in the world of death, everything was new, bright, like the light of radiation. The purpose of many of the objects was beyond his imagination. Perhaps they had a function so ingenious that the demons simply could not comprehend it. And Poro believed he was right. What attracted him most was a country called Japan, a land of peace, art, and nature. It embodied everything he adored in the human world. Japan seemed too ideal. Poro began to learn the language, wrote everything down in a notebook, and dreamed of living there. And then a thought occurred to him that changed everything. In all 2,000 years, he had never been so determined. Right then and there, Poro decided he would go to Japan. The decision was made. Everything went smoothly from then on. There were many ways to get to another dimension, but a student visa turned out to be the easiest option. He knew that they would try to stop him. So he silently left a letter asking them not to look for him. And for the first time in his life, he boarded the Shinkansen to the human world. His high-profile title of Demon King was just a symbol. If you abandon everything, nothing will change. And so much knowledge about Japan will definitely help you adapt. He was filled with joy. He was saying goodbye to the role of heir and setting out into the world he loved. I almost cried with happiness, dreaming of a beautiful human life. But when the moment came, panic gripped me. The demonic energy was haunting me. The teacher announced a new student, and Poro was about to enter. A wave of fear swept over his head. Everything had not gone according to plan. He had heard that the citrus scent was calming, but when he pulled out the lemon, the berry began to eat him. Poro couldn't believe it. The fruit was literally eating him. Bloodied and scared, he calmed down a bit. He remembered how he had studied the language, etiquette, and traditions until he was exhausted. You just had to believe in yourself. The plan was simple. Bright facial expression, loud, with humor. A good first impression is the key to a new life. He grabbed the door handle. I was so nervous that I didn't even notice how I kicked the door open in my haste. I greeted the class cheerfully. The students and the teacher were in shock. Part of the wall collapsed along with the classroom door. The students immediately compared the newcomer to a gorilla, but even a gorilla couldn't knock down a wall with a door. They decided it was just a strange coincidence. The class began to whisper. He sat down at his desk, sadly wishing someone would kill him. He had forgotten the gulf between human and demonic power. If someone accidentally finds out who he is, he will be in trouble. He will either be hated or feared or recognized as a prince. Disaster is quite real. Everything is already out of control. The best you can hope for is to look around and go back to hell. But then suddenly, one student put his hand on Poro's shoulder and praised his performance. Poro jumped up in surprise and broke the desk in half. He tried to pretend nothing had happened. A new acquaintance introduced himself, Yuta. He was sitting behind and offered to help if Poro needed anything. He was grateful for his kindness. Yuta was interested in the book that Poro was reading. It had notes about the sights of Japan. He even liked the demon's handwriting. Poro admitted that he wanted to live a normal life, but it was difficult to find the necessary materials. A classmate thought that Poro was a migrant. A strange name, unusual eyes. Where was he from? Poro realized that he had said too much. He replied that he was from a very distant land. So distant that it sounded like a joke. Seeing how embarrassed he was, Yuta suggested just leaving everything as it was, and became his unexpected guide around the city. He said he's always open to having fun. Games, karaoke, movies, bowling, the oceanarium, anywhere. The main thing is to be together. Yuta asked where Poro would like to go. The demon thought about it, and then he exclaimed that he wanted to visit everything. Yuta just smiled at such ambition. Meanwhile, demons were watching him from the trees in the schoolyard. They had no idea that this troublemaker was hiding in the human world. One offered to kill him on the spot, but the other stopped him. There would still be a good moment. Yuta took Poro to the cinema and told him that after watching this movie, you would die in 7 minutes. Poro didn't believe it, but the movie turned out to be so scary that he screamed at the whole audience. After the film, Poro admitted that if the session had lasted a little longer, he would have peed himself. He wondered how people could enjoy such things. Yuta laughed. For some, fear is a thrill. Poro had a long list of places he wanted to go. Slot machines, bowling, movies. Each one was a real discovery. He wanted even more. Smiling through his tears, he thought, I wasn't wrong to choose the human world. Yuta didn't understand what he was talking about. Poro just shook his head, pretending not to say anything. And at that moment, he accidentally bumped into a man. A group of hooligans appeared before him, demanding respect. One of them said that this time an apology wouldn't be enough. He needed 10 blows and some cash. Poro apologized and said he was just thinking. But one of the boys grabbed him by the clothes and said that wasn't enough. He needed a wallet. The others just laughed, praising their leader's coolness. But before the leader could finish, Poro's fist flew straight into his face. Everyone froze, watching as Yuta punched the bully in the face with all his might. The bully flew back and hit the ground, his friends frozen in fear. Poro guessed it was probably the Mayan gang. They were rumored to be expanding their territory. But Yuta suddenly changed. He snapped his fingers and got into character. The guys still didn't understand who they were dealing with. Then they suddenly noticed a familiar hairpin in his hair. It was Yuta, a famous hooligan nicknamed Dabachi. They pretended to be offended. He replied that he was usually law-abiding, but he would make an exception for these types. He recalled how he had caught a pickpocket and a pedophile the other day, but they had only laughed. One of them had a grudge against him, saying he was getting in the wrong place. They asked him if he had any reason to beat them. Poro called him Dad, hinting that it was dangerous to touch Yuta. If anyone touched him, they would all end up in the hospital. Yuta shouted that he was ready to fight, but the gang immediately ran away, apologizing. Poro was surprised, because he didn't even know what dabachi was. Yuta was shocked. How could he not know that? It turned out that the word dabachi means friend. Yuta pointed at himself and Poro. Then he apologized to the boys for the delay and ran after them. Poro was happy. He was called a friend. In the manga and anime, he had read that friendship is trust and support. In the demon world, that was not the case. Meanwhile, Yuta was already giving out mists. The gang leader stepped forward with a fierce grimace. Something flashed in his hands, and Poro realized that everything was serious. He swung at Yuta with the intention of killing him. Poro noticed the danger in time and shouted for him to look back. He stretched out his arms, and before he knew it, he pushed the attacker away with such force that he flew into the ceiling and then hit the floor. His friends ran to him, trying to bring him to his senses. They cursed and swore that they would take revenge. Yuta thanked Poro, but he himself did not believe in his strength. Poro was all sweaty. Hearing the shout for the police, Yuta grabbed Poro's hand and pulled him. Time to run. Next stop, karaoke. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the building, two demons were watching everything. They were surprised that those fools were trying to squeeze money out of the most powerful demon. One of them was laughing at how pathetically Poro was trying to blend into human society. His expression seemed truly sad. However, they admitted, the human world has its own magic. Games, girls. One suggested having some fun, but the other emphasized that we need to focus on the mission. After all, the goal is to kill Poro, fulfill his great dream, and become a candidate for the throne. And now is the perfect chance. Attracting attention would be fatal. They noticed a gap in his defenses. One demon glanced at his partner. The time had come. Meanwhile, Poro and Yuta were singing karaoke. Yuta brought the drinks and set the glasses on the table. Yuta lightly pushed Poro on the shoulder and asked him not to stop. An employee was passing by. Poro blushed, embarrassed, and looked at the song list. And suddenly, he heard shy voices behind the door. Someone started singing a song about best friends and dedicated it to them. Although Poro was nervous about his strange debut, he couldn't believe how much he had accomplished in his first day. Coming to the human world had been the best decision of his life. A few minutes later, he decided to check if Yuta was okay. He opened the door to the room and thought that the alcohol had decided to take revenge on him. But what he saw shocked him. Just in front of him, on the wall, a pentagram with a mysterious inscription glowed. Poro didn't understand why she was here, but he recognized the old demon language. It was something bad. The message said, "If you want to save your friend, come to us." It was a magic seal for instant travel. Poro realized, there are still demons in this world, and they took Yuta. But why? No matter how much he thought, the answer eluded him. The only thing he knew for sure was that Yuta had to be returned. Without hesitation, he touched the seal. The space around him instantly began to warp, and now Poro found himself in a completely different place. Looking around, he thought it looked like a werewolf's den. Someone behind him was happy to meet him. They said they still owed him something from the past. Looking back, Poro saw the same two demons. They were holding Yuta, who was desperately resisting. One warned that if Poro resisted, the boy would die. Poro didn't hesitate. He bit the demon's hand and demanded to let his friend go. His voice was much harsher now. The demon's partner asked not to involve the locals. Yuta tried to warn Poro of the danger and asked him to run away, but the demon covered his mouth. The demons laughed. How could a powerful demon be captured by the human world? This was his weakness. They were sure. With a hostage, Poro was powerless. But Poro calmly ordered once, "Let Yuta go." They laughed again. Who was he to give orders? He didn't seem to understand the situation he was in. They were ready to kill him with magic. But Poro did not believe in their superiority. He resolutely rushed forward. His body was covered with a demonic aura, and he grabbed the demon by the head. At that moment, an explosion rang out. A wave of power surged through the air. Poro looked around. The place where everyone had just stood looked deserted. The smoke cleared, and Yuta was shocked to see Poro, enveloped in demonic energy. The demons were stunned. It was impossible. And they could do nothing. Furiously, Poro grabbed their clothes and coldly hissed at them for daring to attack him. Poro angrily rebuked the demons. How dare they attack his friend? Terrified, they no longer doubted that this was their end. But Poro said that he despised murder and asked to listen to the advice. And with these words he struck. A portal opened in the sky. He broke through a rift in space-time that led straight into the demonic world. Both demons shuddered as they witnessed the true power of the strongest. Saying goodbye, Poro sent them into the portal, ordering them not to return. In response, they threatened, next time he would die. And as soon as they disappeared, the portal closed. The sky cleared, the sun peeked out. Raising his head, Poro rejoiced with tears in his eyes. Everything had ended well, but joy was mixed with bitterness. He had betrayed himself, used force, and even broken space. The entire disguise was destroyed. He imagined Utah's reaction. The one who had just begun to trust him would now hate him for cheating, and ask him to stay away. But no matter how far he runs, he cannot escape fate. His demonic origin follows him like a shadow. Poro thought that the fun adventure had come to a sad end, but he didn't notice how Utah, behind him, was examining his horns and tail with a glow of admiration. At school, Poro had backed down, but Utah thought that on the contrary, now everything was starting. He suggested that Poro take a deep breath. Utah said that those demons had told him a lot of things. They had even called Poro a prince. He held out his hand with a smile, but Poro was afraid. Utah had accepted everything too easily. This conversation was supposed to be more serious, with confirmation that he was a demon. But Utah had already figured it out after the door and the bullies. Poro was embarrassed. He had wanted to remain invisible, but Utah took his hand and asked him to forget everything. Today, no whining. He smiled and said, "It doesn't matter whether he is human or demon, because that is what true friendship is." Tears of joy flowed from Poro's eyes, and he smiled. On the very first day, he learned the beauty of the human world, and he understood something much more, his true calling. He truly loved this world and dreamed of staying there forever. But he knew the fate of a demon would overtake him. In his room, he wrote a few lines in a notebook. If he had to meet fate, he would meet it face to face. He was going to collect all the beautiful things from the human world. In a year, he would ascend the throne, and through changes, bring new life to the demon world. His goal is for beauty, like in the human world, to reign among demons. Ahead is a year until the change of power. Poro decided to write down everything beautiful in his exchange diary, and learn about the world without losing any chances of survival. Meanwhile, in the demon world, other demons learned that the prince was having fun among people, and decided to find him and teach him a good lesson. In broad daylight, a boy saw Poro at a traffic light and asked his mother who he was. She only whispered, "Don't look," and led him on. And Poro, in love with the world of people, looked at the traffic light with admiration. One signal was to stop, another was to go. Simple, but brilliant. This is how people kept order. In the demonic world, there were only 3 signals: cross, cross again, and cross anyone again. If they had human traffic lights, there would be fewer accidents. But for now, only one ruled there: a bloody maniac. If he could, Poro would leave the past behind and live in this dream world forever. But unfortunately, in a year, he would become the new demon king. So he decided to dedicate himself to studying in the human world, to eventually transform his native horror into something similar to this beautiful place. His task is to fill the exchange student's diary with all the best he finds in the world of people. He saw someone helping his grandmother cross the road and burst into tears. He wrote in his diary, "Empathy is so human. It's so beautiful. And this is just the beginning." At that moment, the guard stopped Poro. He was 30 seconds late for school. His name was Tadashi Wao. He was a second-grade duty officer. He collected watches, and he looked at Poro very sternly. He said, "You're suspended." Poro was stunned. He couldn't believe all this was really happening. He wanted to know the reason, but Tadashi declared, 30 seconds is a violation. 1 late is 1 criminal. To him, it's the same as murder. He was additionally accused of destroying a wall, breaking a desk, fighting, and attempting to climb a traffic light. By the way, watch the video below. Thanks for watching. The students watched from the window as Tadashi caught Poro. They only sympathized with him. Someone even noticed a strange creature that looked like a long-eared rabbit, watching from the bushes. Tadashi pinched Poro's cheek and said, "You're a newbie, so this time I forgive you." But he reminded me, rules exist for a reason. Alcohol and smoking are prohibited. Laws are the basis of order, and school rules are the basis of social awareness. If the hero doesn't start respecting the rules, Tadashi will have no choice but to suspend him. While explaining this to the frightened Poro, Tadashi heard laughter behind him and turned around. He saw the boys with the forbidden hair color and shouted. They immediately ran away, and Poro's legs gave out. He was scared to death. The strongest demon trembled. Tadashi was more terrifying than any demon he had encountered. Poro decided, "You need to write it down for yourself. Following the rules is more important than ever." Meanwhile, the hooligans broke the glasses of the duty officer. One of them tried to apologize, but the other one silenced him. And Tadashi heard it. Tadashi calmly put on his broken glasses and said coldly, "Hopeless." A beast appeared on the roof, and someone thought it was perfect for a new murder. If you use this monster to kill Poro, you can easily become #1 in the demon world. Meanwhile, Yuta was discussing the strange events surrounding the new student with someone. What they saw gave them goosebumps. Even the strange mushrooms that appeared on the hero's head surprised everyone. Everyone was excitedly discussing who this mysterious guy was. No one understood anything. Poro fell into depression. Yuta carried him on his back. Poro said he had broken the school rules and didn't deserve to be here. And by the way, he was carrying a mushroom that fed on demonic despair. The more suffering, the tastier. Yuta laughed, but noted that Poro was getting heavier and heavier. Iwao was too strict and not at all human, so it was not worth worrying so much about her words. Yuta advised him to simply tell the old woman the truth or ask her to bring Claire. But Poro didn't think that was a good idea. The heroes were walking down the corridor when suddenly a beaten-up hooligan with white hair came flying out from around the corner. It looked like someone had pushed him. He hit the wall. Everyone looked around. Tadashi was approaching them. He had already managed to beat up and arrest his fellow hooligan. When he saw Yuta and Poro, he thought they were just going home. Poro tried to ask what happened, but Tadashi pretended not to understand. He looked at the beaten hooligan, then at the boys, and asked why they were interested in it. He stepped on the bully's face and said, "These are Sueshi Sato and Rai Unakamura from 2E. They smoked, bleached their hair, and broke the rules, so he taught them." But Poro exclaimed, "This is not a lesson, this is cruelty." But Tadashi replied that the real horror is breaking the rules. The world would be a better place without such people, and he doesn't regret his actions. Poro asked him to stop, but Tadashi thought he was being disturbed. A demonic aura began to radiate from him. Adjusting his glasses, Tadashi calmly said that he would destroy them together, and rushed to attack. But Yuta and Poro managed to dodge. Yuta was shocked. The blow pierced the asphalt. How is this even possible? Meanwhile, the hooligans came to their senses and decided to run away from the monster. But Iwao shouted that they would not run away from him. But as soon as he tried to strike, his fist was stopped by Poro's hand. Yuta called him, worried. And then Poro found himself face to face with Tadashi, from whom the same demonic essence emanated. And then Poro understood everything, and the headman asked in surprise, "Who are you, Kirakami?" He already suspected that Poro was not an ordinary person at all, but Poro replied, "You are possessed. Something dark inside you has completely consumed you." Tadashi still didn't understand Poro's words. But the hero remembered what Poro himself had said. The rules are the same for everyone. There were no laws in the demon world. It sounds like freedom, but in reality, it was just a form of chaos that suffocated everyone. People valued kindness and caring. Law and order here were based on morality. They made society better. But taking justice into one's own hands is wrong, and Mr. Tadashi was clearly no longer in control of himself. The headman looked at Poro in surprise. The hero only squeezed his fist tighter and ordered the demon to leave Iwao's body. He pulled the dark demonic entity straight from the body. The demon was shocked. He couldn't believe that Poro was capable of such a thing. The main culprit, the controller rabbit, was released from the body. He was harmless on the outside, but he poisoned the mind of his master, feeding on negativity. Smiling, he greeted the prince. Many years had passed. Poro was furious. "How dare you play with the soul of a respected person?" The rabbit apologized, asked for mercy, and offered to play some more. But then he attacked sharply. Having no master anymore, he attacked on his own. Poro waved his finger, and with all his strength sent him flying. A real lesson for someone who doesn't respect the rules. The next day, Poro gazed with fascination at the red box, the telephone booth. How did people communicate without magic or electricity? To him, it was a miracle. The passerby thanked him for his help yesterday. Now he understood. The explosion of the wall and desk was the result of a force that Poro could not control. Poro was late twice in a row. He knelt down and admitted his guilt, and Yuta laughed and applauded, mocking his friend. Yuta said that Iwao was incapable of such a thing. Only demons would do such a thing. The headman closed the stopwatch and said that the delay was only a few minutes. But for him, it was already a disaster. He didn't want to mess with the rules so much that the demons could take him again. Poro was moved and looked at Iwao with a warm smile. Meanwhile, the demon rabbit fell onto the moon. The white moon rabbits, who had never seen him here, gathered around in amazement. Ryan Fu and his partner were still in the human world. They were surprised to see a familiar girl. Rai smiled, not expecting to see her here. The girl didn't recognize them, and said she had no time for weaklings. And it was better for them to disappear before she changed her mind. The demons flattered her. They said she was worthy of being the goddess of fire. They boasted that they have become stronger after the last defeat and want to show it. But the next moment, a pillar of light cut through the sky. The clouds scattered, leaving behind the burned bodies of demons. The girl, without stopping, continued on her way. One of the wounded only whispered, "Was that a joke?" And Ruika Kagami thought that the next Demon King would be her husband, and she would not accept anyone less. Before he even finished reading the manga, Poro was already crying. He exclaimed that it was truly beautiful. Yuta laughed at the hero roaring through the siege scene. Poro said that demons also get married and have children, only romance doesn't exist in their world. Dates, kisses, awkward moments, it all seems like a deep culture. For demons, only pure blood matters. Marriage is simply a way to produce stronger offspring. Yuta joked in horror that it was like breeding stallions. Poro wanted to study the subject more deeply and bring the knowledge home. Perhaps it would soften the fight or die mentality. Yuta already knew Poro was incredibly strong, but Poro quickly changed the subject, rolling his eyes. Yuta didn't understand what the problem was, but at that moment the teacher addressed them. She had barely managed to say that there was a new student in the class when a girl crashed through the door. She calmly kicked it open and said hello. She looked like a demon. She introduced herself as Ruika Kagami. She said she loved strong boys and was happy to meet them. Yuta joked that they now had 2 destroyers. Meanwhile, Poro clutched his book in fear. His emotions erupted, and he accidentally tore the book in half. Yuta commented maliciously, "Oh, your future wife is here!" And Poro turned pale. During dinner, Ruika pinned Poro against the wall. He begged to let him go, but she ordered him to be quiet. How dare he leave without telling his fiancée? She tore his shirt off and ordered him to finally become a man and have a child for her. Poro only begged for help, looking at Yuta. Ruika seemed pleased. As Poro had said before, in their world, power decides everything. Marriages between powerful clans are a common thing. She hugged him tightly and said that their child would definitely be the strongest demon. She suggested that they go get married and have a bunch of babies. But Poro tried to pull away. He explained that it was because of people like her that he escaped to the human world. There is love here. People meet, go on dates, live together, and only then, marriage and children. Ruika didn't understand anything. Why all these complications when you can just get together and have a baby? It was a mystery to her. Poro said that he wouldn't return home until he completed his mission and filled his diary with the wonders of the human world. He didn't want children. Ruika decided he had simply become a real boy, but she had an idea to help him study romance. She said she would forgo mating for now and would help with the diary. Poro was surprised by this offer. Ruika thought it was a wonderful prelude to the wedding. Yuta asked if she was sure. Ruika replied that yes, she was in the business. Together they would learn what love was, and the first thing to start with was a real date. Yuta just smiled sideways, but didn't interfere. They came to the zoo. There were so many different animals around that it took their breath away. Poro was delighted and invited Ruika to look at these cute creatures. It was the first visit to a zoo for both of them. Ruika didn't understand. Why keep animals in cages if no one was going to eat them? Poro saw the panda and grabbed Ruika's hand to get closer. She just shrugged. Holding hands was awkward. But Poro had read somewhere that's what you should do on dates. Ruika thought he was a fool if he believed she had come here to please him. She secretly took a bottle of perfume called Kitty out of her pocket. One whiff of it would instantly break any demon's chain. In fact, she had no intention of helping with his diary. She was just waiting for the right moment for Poro to lose his guard. Her smile was becoming more and more demonic. As soon as she used the perfume, everything around her exploded into madness. Even the animals went crazy. Poro was confused. The animals were running around like mad. Only the label on the perfume explained the truth. Do not use near animals. It causes aggression. This smell might not only affect strong demons, but all living things. It acted instantly. Ruika was furious, because it was already too late. Poro realized that something was wrong with her, but she brushed it off. A child screamed near the panda enclosure. The panda had escaped. Ruika ran over and saved the little one from the attack. She wanted to make sure the boy was okay, but he just looked at her in fear. At that moment, a whole herd of animals attacked Ruika. But everything changed. With one movement, Poro scattered them and picked up both Ruika and the child in his arms. A moment ago, all the animals were raging, and now they lay still. Ruika was stunned. She didn't even have time to see how he did it. Poro wanted to make sure she was okay, but Ruika just told him to shut up in annoyance. But the hero praised her anyway. She saved the child, and she did it without harming the animal. Poro was surprised. There was kindness in her. Ruika snorted. She simply did not like it when the weak were hurt. You can't continue the meeting here anymore. You have to move on. They went to the movies. Poro, as usual, cried during the sensual scenes. Ruika sat like a statue, thinking about how she had ruined everything. She decided to use the darkness to bind Poro with a demonic snake. And then, whatever happens. Poro was talking about the film. Ruika nodded, pretending to agree. He was happy, because the beauty of the scene and the deep thoughts made it impossible for him to hold back his tears. He knew it was just a practice date, but he felt good with Ruika, and at least a little, he enjoyed the day. Ruika was annoyed by the way he said it. After the movie, Poro went to a place of reflection, the stage. After reading the next scene, he felt both pain and excitement. The date had been fun, but he still didn't understand what romance was. Meanwhile, Ruika was berating herself for not doing anything during the movie. It wasn't love, but Poro realized something important. 30 minutes after the zoo, Poro suggested going to karaoke. Ruika was shocked. He didn't even break a sweat. She finally understood why he was considered the strongest demon, and Poro just smiled happily and said he was full. Ruika asked to wait a bit, took a drink with ice, and decided that the potion might not have worked, so she just drank it all at once. After a few seconds, she blushed and fell onto the table. Poro was scared, not understanding what had happened. Ruika muttered, "Just forget it. It seems to have worked." She closed her eyes, and Poro noticed the poison mark on her hand. He didn't understand why it had appeared. Such a mark meant that someone had taken a lethal dose of a poisonous potion. Ruika didn't have time to say that it was one of the most dangerous essences. She was already preparing to die. But before that, she whispered that she regretted that she and Poro had not had the chance to become a family. And suddenly, she woke up from his kiss. Opening her eyes, Ruika saw the mark disappear. A spectator would probably whistle at this. Such a scene. Poro sucked the poison out of her mouth using an ancient demonic method. He admitted that he didn't know what kind of poison it was, but the technique helped. He was glad that Ruika was a real fighter, and he hugged her tightly. Ruika blushed, couldn't stand the tension, hit him in the face, and immediately ran away. Yuta looked at her in surprise. They hadn't even figured out what romance was yet. He just sipped from his glass and thought, Poro had already taught her everything she needed to know. Poro looked around in confusion, looking for where to pay for water. A car hummed behind him, and the boy was surprised at how quickly it had warmed up. For the first time in his life, Poro was working part-time. The line was huge. Everyone was asking for something. Some for coffee, some for a lottery ticket. The coffee machine broke down, and Poro was apologizing to everyone. They ended up at the store where Yuta worked. He announced the job openings, and Poro and Ruika began their new journey as assistants. Meanwhile, Yuta asked a customer if he ate his soup with chopsticks. It was a great opportunity to learn how to live in the human world. One woman was unhappy with the expired juice. Poro apologized, but didn't know what to do. She explained, "We should immediately exchange it for fresh." Duties included cashiering, cleaning, serving, displaying merchandise, cooking. For Poro, who had lived 10,000 years in the demonic world, it was real hard labor. It was like a real training session. Ruika looked like an experienced employee. She apologized for the delay, handed over a box of goods, coffee from the fridge, hot drinks, and even asked what to write on the check. Poro thought she had already worked here, but Ruika winked and called him a fool. She was preparing to become his wife, so it was all part of the program. Cooking, washing, black magic, murder, taming dragons, and working part-time at the shop. At some point, other customers asked Poro to clear the aisle, and he immediately rushed to work. It seemed to him that he was the only one here who had no time for anything. After a few minutes, he was completely exhausted. The work in the shop had been extremely difficult. He thanked his friends for their help, but Ruika said she had only helped because he had asked her to, so there was nothing to thank her for. Poro was upset. He had made many customers angry. But Yuta assured him that these were minor things. Anyone who enters a fight should not be afraid of making mistakes. Yuta said, "The customer is God." That's what the store sign said. Although some customers misinterpreted it, it still had a profound meaning. Poro listened carefully and thought. He even began to glow with admiration. What a wonderful philosophy. This was the essence of human service. Ruika was also surprised. In the demonic world, dissatisfied customers were simply eaten. There, the salespeople cooked them as a snack. Poro decided this idea must be written down in his diary and someday implemented in his world. Yuta noticed that Poro was lost in thought and asked what had happened. Poro replied that he had just been thinking about the meaning of the word God. And just at that moment, a mysterious man entered the store. He asked them to stop chatting and focus on serving the customer. He winked at Poro and said that he hadn't seen him in a while. Yuta became wary. The store should have been closed by now. Judging by the looks on Poro and Rika's faces, they knew this guy. It was Kamui. He was calmly surveying the store, for the first time in hundreds of years. And he looked as if nothing had happened. He took a rice ball from the shelf. Poro realized that this guy had come here on purpose to annoy him. Kamui said that he had wandered in here by accident. He assured him that he would leave immediately, as soon as he finished reading Weekly Jump. Poro asked him not to act like an idiot. Then he sighed. He is worse than a demon. Both in this world, in the demon world, and in heaven. Tommy Kamui is a god, one of the Celestials. Meanwhile, he was flipping through the manga and praising the plot. Seeing the god in front of him, Poro immediately remembered the past. Kamui, although he looked ordinary, was the same. He used divine reading and had already read to the end. Poro remembered. It was Wind Fury. They had known each other since childhood. Kamui constantly teased him, throwing meteorites at him and vaporizing Poro. And all for no reason. Poro didn't know why he was chasing him. But looking at his smug smile, he understood everything. Kamui declared, "I had power, but there was one thing I never got. You, Poro." The hero only clenched his fists. He knew that this magic was of true depth. And Kamui. He was madly in love with him. He was simply bothered by the fact that there was something he hadn't seen. And he was obsessed with the desire to experience something new. Wherever Poro was, Kamui was always there. He was thinking about how to ruin his day, but as soon as he thought about it, Ruika kicked the god in the face with all her might. She didn't care who he was. She had come here to protect Poro, and if he touched the hero again, she would destroy him. Kamui flew into the air, but managed to shout that the customer is still a god, and he is both a customer and a god at the same time. Ruika was angry because she couldn't do anything, but Poro asked her to stop. He said he cut himself off from the spirit world to learn how to live in the human world. And he doesn't want conflicts from heaven or hell to affect humans. But a client is a client. Kamui attacked Ruika again, but she silenced him. Kamui just smiled. He liked that attitude. He told Poro to hurry up and hinted that it was time to take a risk. With a slight apology, he waved his hand, and all the ingredients in the store came to life. Yuta froze in shock. The chicken skewers started running and the plates started singing. Kamui asked to wait a bit while he fixed everything. But before that, he decided to finish reading the anniversary edition of Jump. Poro scolded him, and Yuta worried. How to stop the rabid animals. Even the canned tuna came to life and became a fish. And a bear appeared from somewhere in the store. Kamui closed the book and said with a smile that the plot was interesting. Amidst the chaos, Kamui apologized for the delay. Poro thought, even in 2,000 years he hasn't changed, while Yuta just sighed. God declared that he was saturated with miraculous power and could now endow any being with holy energy. He said, even now things around are being transformed. Soon everything will become a Sabbath. He explained that the divine beings were simply letting off steam. In the worst case, they would simply sink Japan. Poro replied that then he would sink with it. The hero grabbed Kamui by the shirt and started shaking him, demanding to fix the situation. The hero reminded him, "You should respect the customer." Poro apologized, and Kamui agreed to temporarily turn everything back. Kamui carefully placed the purchases in the basket and said he would take them to the sky. And Poro began punching through the goods at the checkout at the speed of light, before all of Japan was destroyed. Kamui admitted that he had a good time, but it was time to go home, and he asked for some onigiri to be heated up for him. Poro didn't even get mad. He honestly didn't understand how such a crazy guy could be so kind. Kamui said he liked it. Poro turned on the microwave. But as soon as the stove was turned on, it lit up. The onigiri glowed, as if it was about to explode. Poro assumed that it was because Kamui had been holding it in his hands the whole time. The product was saturated with divine power. Kamui reassured him that only the floor would explode. Poro, in a panic, asked for something to be done. Kamui replied, "There's nothing you can do." He remembered that he had traveled to the edge of the universe with his sister before, and had simply run out of fuel. And besides, his divine light bulb had almost gone out. Poro couldn't believe it, and turned back to his onigiri in horror. There was an explosion, but for some unknown reason, everyone survived. Yuta and Ruika opened their eyes, trying to understand what had happened. And Kamui thought that he was just being played a joke. He was shocked. Poro had absorbed this energy. The hero, in anger, grabbed the god by the mantle. Looking into Poro's demonic eyes, Kamui decided that this was the end of him. But Poro said, "This is a defective product. Please replace it." And suddenly, he fainted. His friends rushed to him. Kamui smiled and admitted defeat. Poro turned out to be better than even a deity. He was satisfied with the service. Yuta and Ruika calmed down when they made sure that Poro was breathing. From that day on, Kamui continued to come to the store. Poro didn't understand why, because he had already had fun. But Kamui never promised that he wouldn't come back. Moreover, he personally healed the cashier. He left 100 yen and left. The next morning, Poro opened his eyes. He was woken up by a black-haired girl who told him it was time to get up. He would be late. He recoiled. She calmly replied, "Breakfast is ready." She asked him to put away the futon and said she had been waiting for him since morning. Poro looked around, trying to figure out where he was. His heart was pounding as he tried to remember what had happened the day before. Due to the renovation of the building, Poro was left homeless. He became a homeless demon. But Yuta saw him on his way home from school and invited him to live with him. So Poro got free housing without doing anything. He looked around the house with delight. He was served breakfast, and everything seemed like a luxury to him. He was fascinated by the aesthetics of the Japanese house. Everything was like a work of art. Yuta shrugged. "It's just a big house." But Poro was delighted. The girl explained with a smile. The Hitoishi family had owned this estate for generations, and Yuta was the heir to the head of a large trading company. And the fish for breakfast was divine. As the future heir, Yuta had to deal with real estate, heavy industry, and other serious matters. His father had high expectations, and this put pressure on him. Yuta apologized to the girl, saying he had been rude. The girl apologized, but Poro didn't understand what had happened. Yuta added that even though the house was old, there were many free rooms in it. Poro could choose anyone. And he reminded me that Poro was still an exchange student, like a member of the family. But he warned me. There might be ghosts in the house. Poro said that he wasn't afraid of little things. And then the door suddenly opened. A stern man appeared on the doorstep, pouncing on the boy because of the color of his hair. It was Tatoshi Yujin, the 10th chairman of the company and Yuta's father. He declared that everything should be the same as before when he returned, and called Poro trash. Yuta was completely calm. Seeing Poro, the father asked who it was. The girl explained. It was a classmate of Yuta who would now live with them. Tatoshi shook Poro's hand, called himself the fool's father, and welcomed the guest. At first he thought Poro was just an ordinary boy, but there was something deeper in his eyes, as if he had lived for centuries. He didn't yet know that he was facing a demon who was over 2,000 years old. The father wanted to know what Poro's father did. Poro shied away and said, "I'm in charge of people, or something." The father decided he was a manager. Poro agreed, almost. The father decided, the boy will definitely cope. But Yuta, he was supposed to inherit the company, but he just sits around. He was given a shameful nickname for his constant fights. He complained about how difficult it was to organize everything. Yuta calmly finished his meal, put down his plate, and replied, "You only come to teach." The father was furious. The atmosphere was tense. The girl suggested that Poro go to school. She was already tired of this business comedy. The father grabbed a bamboo sword and struck Yuta in the face, demanding that he repeat his words. Yuta fell. Poro flinched, but immediately got up and slashed at his father. He didn't understand how he could hit his own son. To him, this man wasn't even worthy of holding a sword. The girls tried to stop them, but it seemed like this wasn't the first time this had happened. Father and son exchanged insults. The girl shouted, "Enough!" so loudly that Poro jumped. Before them stood Tatoshi's wife, Yuta's mother. She reminded them that they were being looked at, and it was a shame. They were both grown men, but they were behaving like children. Yuta said he would go to school. His father threatened to cut his throat and dropped another hint about the suicide note. His mother just sighed. This was their usual show. The maids whispered, "This always happens. If the mistress doesn't intervene, these two will never stop." A friend advised them not to speak out loud. They might be heard. Yuta's mother decided to just ignore it. At that moment, the director approached her and assumed she was Yuta's mother. Poro remembered that he hadn't introduced himself yet, and apologized. He introduced himself as Yuta's friend. The girl looked at him in surprise. She came to her senses and apologized for her unexpected reaction, thanking Poro for always taking care of Yuta. The hero wanted to say that he was the one who should be thanked. The woman smiled and introduced herself as Sumire. She had been absent yesterday and had not been able to greet him. She had heard their conversation and understood that Poro would stay with them. It might seem strange, but she had asked him to listen to her. She had a small but important request. She said that only Poro could help. She asked him to listen to a personal story. Meanwhile, Ruika tried to feed Poro again, but he couldn't anymore. His stomach was full. She poked him with sausage sticks and demanded more. She said that these were love bentos, the way lovers exchange food, and he had to eat everything. Poro reminded her, "You're not my wife," but she made him keep quiet and enjoy it. Yuta was shocked. Had she really cooked all of this herself? Poro tried it and admitted, "It's delicious." But Ruika immediately forbade him from eating it. She called Yuta out for eating dried squid. He wanted her to make him a bento too. But the maximum was just one piece. Meanwhile, Poro remembered the story of Yuta's mother. Her husband was always busy. Even in his sleep, he was with company. When she was in the hospital, he didn't visit her, and sometimes he even forgot about his family. But it's even harder for a child to bear all this. They realized it too late. She realized he worked for them, but it was very difficult to forgive a forgotten family. She was afraid that someday it would be even worse. And she asked Poro, as a friend, to help. Maybe he could call someone else. But it was too personal. She said that Yuta would bring up the subject again as soon as he got back. So she asked Poro to keep it a secret. She didn't want to let anything worse happen. Poro fully supported her. He knew a real fight was brewing between father and son. And this time the situation was worse than ever. The father told his son that after the fight he would go to a meeting. And if he lost, Yuta would never leave the house again. And if he won, his son would not have to return. Poro tried to stop Yuta, but Yuta told his father, "Attack." His father replied that if he lost, Poro could stay. Poro didn't know how to stop it all. Swords clashed. The father was convinced that the milk son would not win. Yuta thought that the old man had completely lost his mind. And then the mother appeared. Poro asked her, "How do we stop them?" She sighed. It happened faster than she thought. But there's nothing you can do. They're both strong. At least until they kill each other. She asked Poro to follow her, saying that if everything went right, they would succeed. But she couldn't explain anything yet. In the fight, both of them paused to catch their breath. Yuta noticed that his father was not the same anymore. Age was taking its toll, but his father still considered him a weakling. And then they decided it was time to end it. Both swung their swords at the same time, and suddenly a porpoise appeared between them, and stopped both blows in one jump. The father looked at Poro in surprise, who stopped their blows without a scratch. The hero only took a piece of paper from his pocket and said that he had seen what he was supposed to show. It was something very important, which is why he intervened. The photo shows their happy family at an amusement park. The father couldn't figure out where it was in Poro. It was their first and last trip together, after which his condition deteriorated significantly. It was the most recent photo of their family. Since then, Poro asked why everyone around him was ignoring the photo. It turned out that only he could see it, thanks to his powerful magical abilities. The mother's soul apologized for her silence, but thanks to Poro, she was able to convey her feelings. The ghosts did not frighten her. It was trivial compared to her emotions. Sometimes strong feelings become the magic that allows a soul to remain in the world. It was thanks to the love of family that it was able to appear, and Poro felt for the first time the true depth of human hearts. The soul thanked Poro. If it weren't for his quick rapprochement with Yuta, she wouldn't have been able to leave. Before disappearing, she asked him to take care of them both. Yuta and his father wondered where Poro got this picture from. They thought it had been lost for a long time, but the hero could not reveal the secret. Yuta suggested going to school, but his father suddenly turned to his son. He wished them both caution on the road. He sincerely thanked Poro for his concern. Later, Poro wrote everything down in his diary. A real family is an invisible feeling that is always with you. The friends came to the entertainment center, full of noise, people, and fun. Football, tennis, billiards, archery. Poro was delighted, and Yuta decided to start with baseball to warm up. Poro grabbed Ruika by the hand and pulled her to the food court, but she got angry. She said, "Don't pull me!" Poro was surprised. Does she really not like being touched? And then suddenly a girl with long hair appeared, pushed Ruika away with her foot, and rushed to Poro with her arms. She was happy to see him. A lot of time passed, but Poro was safe and sound. He was shocked. It was Nono. She learned that he lived in the human world and decided to visit him. Yuta immediately understood. This was not a person. Ruika was angry at her appearance. Poro introduced Yuta to his childhood friend, an angel named Nana, who is also the younger sister of Kamui himself. Yuta was shocked. Did that hysterical god really have such a cute little sister? He couldn't believe that this crazy person had such a nice family. Poro laughed. He hadn't believed it himself for a long time. But Nana had been kind since childhood. She had always protected him from gods and demons. She temporarily lived among people while her brother fooled around. She was struck by the depth of human feelings. Ever since she was little, she wanted to help. So as soon as she left heaven, she immediately ran to Poro. She asked to spend the day with him. He patted her on the head and agreed. The day was supposed to be wonderful, and they all went out to have fun together. Nana raised her hand joyfully and called out Poro's name. Suddenly, Nana's hand turned into a multitude of sharp thorns. While Poro happily walked forward, she viciously stuck the thorns into his back. No one expected this. He ran forward happily, wondering which game to start with. But the cold-blooded Ruika stopped Nana's blow and glared at her smile. She said that Nana was attacking from the sidelines as usual and threatened to keep an eye on her. She called her a fake, and she just laughed. She said, "Don't compare me to vulgar Ruika." Ruika warned Yuta, "This girl has been hunting Poro's life force for over 1,000 years. Poro suspected nothing, and Ruika confirmed it. She was trying to kill him again and hide in the commotion." Nana replied with a smile that "kill" sounded harsh, because her motives were deeper than the ocean. She remembered admiring a photo of Poro 1,000 years ago, with his gentle gaze and mouse-like cheeks. Her room was full of photos of Poro. She dreamed of marrying him, even though he was a demon and she was Kamui's sister. But those photos, taken secretly, began to scare Poro. He tried not to show fear, but reminded her, angels and demons cannot marry. She offered divine ways, but he replied, "One must be reborn." It's a sad story, but at least no one else could steal it. Nana clutched the portrait so tightly that the glass cracked. She decided it would be better to kill him herself than to give him away. Kamui warned her that her exile would upset him. Nana didn't want a brutal murder, so she planned to do it beautifully. She flew into the sky and asked Poro to wait a little. Kamui joked that if she killed him, he would be resurrected as an angel. It was an obsessive, strange, but sincere love. Yuta agreed. This angel is a real horror. Nana was indignant. If it weren't for Ruika, she would have achieved her goal long ago. But how can you talk about marriage if you want to kill your husband? She thought. Maybe with someone strong like Ruika, everything would be fine. And she suggested sleeping with her brother. Ruika screamed that she wanted nothing to do with that heavenly idiot. Then Nana noticed that the boys were still sitting. and they had to hurry while there were still seats. She grabbed Poro's hand, smiled sweetly, and said that they had just had a word. Then she turned to the rest. She said, "If you want to stop me, please try." But she didn't believe that anyone could. Poro just glanced at them, and Nana reminded them that everything they had just talked about was a secret. Otherwise, she would shut them up. After that, Poro didn't even understand why he felt so bad, and everything was falling apart. Not a single bullet hit him. Yuta advised him to just give up. A bunch of bullets piled up in a heap. Poro couldn't even understand how that was possible. He suggested that Nanny try. She replied, "If even he couldn't do it, I'm definitely not good at it." But then she hit the balls with all her might. The hit was so fierce that the ball flew off the field and began flying throughout the hall. The bullets were heading straight for Poro. But Ruka instantly dropped her cue and pierced them like meat on a skewer. Everyone was shocked. Nana had blown away all the bullets with one blow. Yuta looked at the wall. Ruiki's cue had driven the bullets in like nails. A real battle, not a game. But it was just the beginning. The girls competed in everything. Darts, rollerblading, soccer, baseball, and every time it turned into a battle. 5 hours later, they started playing tennis. The tired Nana wiped her sweat. "If I lose here, I will accept defeat with dignity." Ruika was angry. This was too much. Nana's shoulder blades have grown huge wings. She's tired of playing. It's time to move on to real combat. With a furious speed, she threw the ball straight at Poro. Ruika didn't even have time to notice. The ball hit the hero from the side. Poro looked around in horror, and Nana only smiled. "I am a friend in heaven," and it was love invested in the blow. She had enough of a short pause from Ruika. She knew that Poro was the first among the demons, so she decided to throw 2 more balls. But here Ruika stood in the way, ready to answer. Nana said with a smile, "You're stupid. You just need a strong child, not risk your life." But Ruika burst into flames. With a red face, she exclaimed that she didn't care about strength or conception. She just loved Poro. Her fists were blazing. Ruika lost consciousness, and when she opened her eyes, she saw Poro in front of her. He said that she fainted from overexertion. If he hadn't stopped everything, it could have been worse. Ruika was horrified. She had used up too much magic. And where was Nana? It turned out she had simply gone home. But before that, she asked me to deliver a message. She didn't believe that a demon could know about love, and she asked Ruika to appreciate it. Nana decided to step back, but not forever. She promised to return. In the meantime, she asked Ruika to support Poro, but she still didn't understand what it all meant. Poro didn't hear what she shouted then either. Everything was confusing in his head. Ruika was embarrassed and said that she hadn't said anything. Yuta understood everything, and just smiled softly. Ruika was still angry with Nana. But despite everything, even as an enemy, she surprised her. A new student has arrived at school. Shurakami, aka Nana. Ruika is furious. She didn't say it would happen today. Nana just shrugged. "I didn't say anything like that." Ruika clenched her fists. Meanwhile, Poro came across another joke from Kamui. While he was brushing his teeth, he put a seal on him. The demonic mark blocked magic. Now Poro was like a human. But he himself did not understand anything. Kamui appeared out of nowhere and stuck a strange thing on his forehead. "It wouldn't come off," Kamui explained. "The mark absorbs power. It can be removed, but that will be in the next issue." Poro couldn't stand it and hit him. The pain was unbearable. Kamui reminded him, a normal person hitting a god could break his arm. For the first time in a century, Poro truly felt pain, and looked at his arm in disbelief. Kamui winked. "I hope you liked the joke. I prepared it with love." Then he disappeared. But on the threshold he looked back again. Poro looked at his watch. Now that his body was like that of a normal person, he had to hurry. He ran out with a toast in his mouth, and Yuta's father wished him a safe journey. Previously, he could have arrived in 3 seconds, but now Yuta was already ahead of him. Poro was running to the station when suddenly a girl on a bicycle didn't have time to brake and hit him. The guy was thrown several meters away. The girl apologized and asked if he was okay. Poro hadn't yet had time to realize what had happened. It was only now that it dawned on him. His body, his reactions, and his perceptions had become truly human. What had once been a trivial matter for him, avoiding a train like an ant, now required effort. Even a bicycle seemed like a tank to him. He had never thought that the human body was so fragile. The girl suggested calling an ambulance, but Poro refused. He realized that if he was not careful, he wouldn't last long. Kamui had thrown him a real mess, but it seemed he had figured out how to get rid of it. He walked on, digesting his thoughts, when he noticed that he was breathing too fast, as if after a marathon. He was waiting for a transfer at the station, but he had no idea where to go. Everything around him reminded him of a sea of fading flowers, a place from the demonic world. It was rush hour, and Poro couldn't even turn around. It was like fighting a giant economic monster. He was being squeezed from all sides, and although at first he had liked the seriousness of the human world, now he was beginning to have doubts. It was not so simple. Meanwhile, Nana apologized for causing her brother trouble again. She wanted to take responsibility. She even prepared her sword. Ruika thought she wanted to get slapped again, but Nana confessed. She had completely forgotten about everything. She sighed. In this state, marriage no longer makes sense. Ruika became angry and asked, "What did you just say?" Poro also said that he was no longer suitable for marriage. His powers had disappeared. Ruika wanted to take his hand and say, "I love you even like this." But she was too ashamed, and Nana just smiled. It was the first time Yuta had heard of the demonic seal. Nana suggested that perhaps people could suggest something, but Yuta knew nothing. Suddenly, Poro remembered something from human fairy tales. To lift the curse, you need a kiss from your lover. He was delighted. If he was lucky, he wouldn't even have to fight. But two creepy girls appeared in front of him. Ruika thought it was a great excuse to test out the kissing method, and Nana smiled and said that her kiss would be so hot that her heart wouldn't be able to take it. Poro ran away, and the girls followed him. They demanded their kisses, and he shouted that they would simply eat him. Finally, he ran away to the city. The girls began to quarrel among themselves. Ruika reproached, "Because of you, we lost him." And Nana mocked, "You just want his kiss." Poro, hiding around a corner, quickly jumped into the first building he came across. He decided to wait, but suddenly he heard a voice behind him. A girl greeted him and said that if he didn't have a seat, they would find a table. Looking around, he saw a cafe. People were sitting at tables. Everything looked familiar. He remembered reading about such places in books. The girl smiled and explained, "The promotion now is nuts and syrup for free with tea, and also low-calorie cookies, frappuccinos, orange mochachinos with sauces, and a 10% discount if you bring your own glass." Poro was convinced. She was casting a spell. The waitress politely asked Poro not to rush and left. He sat down at the table with a sad look on his face. In his new body, even ordering in a coffee shop was difficult. The world seemed foreign. He decided to rest for a while. But suddenly a group of guys approached him. They saw that he was a foreigner and wanted to have some fun. They dragged him out of the establishment like a child and laughed. "Thanks for the money." One noticed something under his jacket. Poro's diary. He snatched it, threw it on the ground, and stepped on it. Another said that Poro's wallet was worth nothing but a trash can. Poro lowered his head. As much as he hated the demon world, the human world seemed disgusting too. Everything he had learned that day was bitter. He was aware of his weaknesses, but he still believed in people. Maybe the life of an exchange student was exactly what he needed. He reached for his diary, and then a voice boomed, "Don't you dare step on what is dear to my friend." Yuta quickly overthrew the gang leader and forbade them from touching Poro's things. He smiled at Poro and apologized for taking so long. His punch was so hard that the rest of the boys fell to the ground. Poro looked at his friend in surprise. Yuta picked up the crumpled diary and returned it to Poro. He managed to save it before it was destroyed, but it was just the beginning. A black hole opened in the sky and demons fell from it. They already knew that the prince had lost his power, and they all wanted to become the new king by killing him. Yuta shouted, "Are they here? Then I won't give them Poro." Poro looked at his friend and thought, "This is madness. A person cannot resist demons." But Yuta only replied, "I am not a fool." He didn't intend to win, but he wanted to protect his friend. The demons told him to get up, but Yuta replied, "You're just too tall. Neither force nor magic can overcome a heart full of faith." It was this human warmth that Poro had been searching for all his life. Poro struck the ground angrily. He was ashamed that he had given up so quickly. He wanted the strength to protect such people. And the seal on his forehead began to crack. The demons were already approaching, shouting to the prince to prepare. But suddenly, everything froze. A blinding light shone from Poro, and a demonic hand appeared in his hand. Poro had changed. His eyes were burning with rage. They had touched their friend, and it was their fatal mistake. A powerful bundle of energy was born in his hands. The wave of power swept away the demons in an instant. Yuta was amazed. And high in the sky, Kamui watched and laughed. He liked what he saw. Although Poro held back his strength, he broke the seal with his own will. His old ancient demonic essence reawakened. By the way, the seal could be removed with regular vinegar. But who would have thought that a human product would remove demonic magic? Poro pierced it himself without any prompting from Kamui. Now the god was wondering what mischief to do next. Meanwhile, Poro's demonic hand cut through the sky again. Poro got sick. Ruika embarrassedly admitted that she had seen everything. He thought it was really cool, although Yuta didn't understand her pathos. Poro just covered his face and wanted to fall into the ground. And Nana brought him apples, with a poisonous aroma, for which Ruika scolded her. The hero staggered, and sneezed so hard that it pierced the roof of the house. I decided to buy ice cream, but instead I witnessed a strange incident. A drunk student in a school uniform stood over the beaten boys. He said that he was now forced to drink from the ground because of their insolence. Poro immediately noticed that the uniform he was wearing was from their school. He picked up one of the injured and was about to strike, but Poro stopped his fist. The boy growled, "Don't interfere!" But Poro replied, "You smoke, drink, and beat people. This won't end well." Then he grabbed Poro's hand and squeezed it with all his strength. He said he had the strongest skull in the world, and hit Poro with his head, and immediately fell unconscious. Poro only sighed. "I warned you." Well, of course, the strongest skull among demons. Time passed. The beaten boy came to his senses and saw Poro next to him. The hero smiled. "You slept a little." Poro was going to bring water, but the boy bowed. He said that Poro was incredibly strong and asked to be his apprentice. The hero was impressed. The next day, everyone was talking about the new student, who was called the Demon. Many were afraid of him. Rumors spread. They say he was cruel. "He's always fighting, you bastard." And really, it was better not to touch him. A boy passed by and called Poro a little snotty. But as soon as Kimura looked at him, everyone immediately ran away. Poro asked not to be called a teacher. He himself had to learn from people. But Kimura didn't understand. The one who knocked him down with one blow was definitely a teacher. And now he wanted to be there always. Poro didn't understand why he was so obsessed with power. After all, there was also love, friendship. Kimura thought for a moment, but answered simply, "I just like being the strongest." Kimura's smile was frightening. Poro thought about it. It turns out that even in the human world there are values similar to demonic ones. The world is complex, but sometimes too complex. Nearby, a girl near a tree was asking a cat to be careful. It was stuck on a branch and couldn't get down. Poro simply uprooted the tree and tilted it so that the frightened cat could jump down safely, right in front of the shocked girl. The girl was glad that the cat Ryan was safe. She hugged him, and Poro quickly put the tree back in place, looking back so that no one would see. But then a familiar voice was heard. Kimura was calling his teacher again. Kimura tried to repeat what he had seen and move the tree, but he was too weak. From the outside, it looked as if he had completely lost his mind. The girl thanked Poro and gave him and Kimura a small gift. Inside was an ordinary lollipop heart. Kimura beamed with joy. Poro suggested moving on to the second training session, and he immediately agreed. And behind them, imperceptibly, a suspicious group was watching them. Kimura had no idea what kind of training the teacher would come up with. But Poro decided he would teach only good things. In the subway, he lifted his grandfather in his arms, declaring that they would train, holding the others like dumbbells. The passengers looked at them in amazement. The next stage was balancing on the edge of the roof. The man Poro was holding thought he was dying right now, and then ran into burning houses to rescue the wounded. In the human world, a different kind of strength is valued. Tired, the boys sat down on a bench to rest. Poro praised Kimura. "We did a good job today." Kimura was breathing heavily, but said he was ready to do anything to become stronger. He took the lollipop from the girl and felt something strange, an unknown warmth. The people they saved came up to them and thanked them sincerely. Kimura was confused. Poro asked what happened and wanted to unwrap the candy, but it slipped out of his hands. He ran after her, while Kimura ate his lollipop. At that moment, a stranger approached him. Poro returned with a dusty candy. He smiled. Delicious. But Kimura was no longer on the bench. In the alley, the boys beat Kimura over and over again. One praised the other. "You hit it right." And the other replied, "One more time?" They learned that Kimura is a demon and found his weakness. In their hands is a kitten that Poro saved. One of them put a knife to the animal. Kimura begged, "Leave him alone. You can beat me 100 times." He stood up, his gaze unwavering. The leader approached, but Kimura only smiled. He was not afraid of the beatings. He remembered the sincere smile of that girl, and that was enough not to be afraid. At the moment of impact, Poro appeared, intercepting the bat with his bare hand. It began to melt in his palm. He said softly that even a hero needs a teacher's help sometimes. He made the 3 attackers freeze with a look. Poro squeezed the bat. It turned into a small black ball. The boys screamed and ran away, shouting, "It's a real demon!" Kimura staggered, but Poro managed to catch him. "You're very strong to have survived this." Later, they found the girl crying on a bench. Kimura handed her the kitten and said gently, "We brought it back." The girl hugged the kitten tightly. Kimura asked her to never lose her pet again. Unexpectedly, she hugged Kimura himself, thanking him for his help, despite his bruises. He was confused and nodded to Poro in surprise. Poro winked, and Kimura proudly replied, "Because I'm strong." From that day on, he stopped pushing in crowds. Strength now wasn't in his fists. At night, screams rang out on the street. A woman fell down in horror, a monster in front of her. A pentagram with the number 23 was carved on her bloody hand. The school found out a maniac had appeared in the city. The victims were an English teacher and a grandfather who sold flowers. Both survived, but the motive for the crimes was unclear. Poro shuddered. It was too cruel. He was hurt. Now he would no longer meet these people on his way to school. Kimura was furious. "I will not forgive anyone who mutilates women and the elderly." Kimura wanted to deal with the culprit himself, but Poro and Yuta were against violence. Kimura fumed, "Talking is useless." Kimura looked at Yuta with contempt. How dare this libertine call the teacher by his first name, and threatened to turn his face into scrambled eggs. Yuta accepted the challenge, confident that he would win. Kimura decided to prove who was the strongest in the world. Ruika supported the fight, and Nana gave Kimura a 9 out of 10. Kimura raised his fist to the sky and called Ruika his goddess. She blushed. "What? Stop it." Kimura believed that the teacher's bride should be a goddess. Ruika didn't know how to react, and Nana reminded her that Poro was her. Kimura said he had already looked at the teacher, and that was enough. He left. Rumors were spreading around the school. Kirakami was friends with a demon. A month had passed since Poro's arrival. He was worried about how everything would go, but now he was living in discoveries. But before he could comprehend it, screams rang out from the classroom. Everyone ran out. An ambulance was working nearby. Another attack, right in broad daylight. There were no witnesses. The victim is Ms. Miyazawa from the library. The third one, right next to the school, the same pentagram. But this time the number 19 is carved on the hand. It was like a message. Poro looked at the photo of the victims on the boy with the phone next to him. He was surprised. The guy had photos of the victims. The guy with the eye patch recognized Poro from the 5th grade. The hero didn't understand who it was. But the man grabbed his hands. "We met at the best moment!" He introduced himself as Hikaru Tsukumo, vice president of the journalism club. He invited the heroes to talk in the clubroom. They followed, full of surprise. Journalist Hikaru immediately sensed something was wrong and began his investigation. He showed photos of the victims, where a pentagram with a number was carved into their palms. Presumably the attacker is counting down, but why are the numbers decreasing? Hikaru wanted to at least understand the meaning of the sign. Clutching the phone, he promised to expose the criminal in the name of journalism and become the club's president. Despite his personal motives, he bowed to Poro and asked for help. The hero didn't understand why, but Hikaru had an answer. Because Poro is the most terrible thief, around whom people like Yuta walk. And with him, and Hikaru could sleep peacefully. Poro himself was confused, and Yuta thought it was cool. Hikaru apologized. The article simply mentioned a demon who had descended to Earth. Poro exclaimed indignantly that such a headline ruined everything. The journalist called everyone to investigate. But suddenly Poro's phone rang. It was a call from the hospital between heaven and earth. The number in the log was Kira Kami. All the victims of the attack were in this hospital. None of them have woken up yet. They found another one, Kimura Dono. His palm was covered in blood, and on it was the number 15. Everyone was in shock. How could Kimura lose? They came to visit him. Ruika brought food, and Poro felt the remnants of magic on the pentagram. The 5-pointed star is a demonic pentagram. Such symbols were used in rituals and as marks on sacrifices. The meaning of the numbers was unclear. Perhaps a demon was behind all this. But then why attack people? Poro remembered something, and realized that he had to act right now. Meanwhile, Nana encountered a clawed creature in a dark alley. Its smile did not bode well. She waited for him and spread her wings. "Don't think I'm your next victim." Angelica unleashed her power, ready to destroy his diabolical plan. The boys rushed to look for her. Hikaru assumed she had simply left. But Poro sensed danger. His premonition came true. Nana was found unconscious. On her palm was a pentagram with the number 12. Poro begged her to wake up. It's impossible for the second angel after God to be defeated. Poro trembled. He couldn't imagine who was capable of such a thing. On Nana's palm, Poro saw an inscription, the last message. It pointed to the diary. The hero did not understand why now, until the truth was revealed. He thanked Nanny, opened the diary, and began to flip through the pages. Hikaru also frantically searched for clues in her notes. He carefully checked the numbers, and realized that all this was not for nothing. Poro stopped at page 20, and instantly turned pale. The answer was right in front of him. It turned out that the numbers on the victim's hands were the page numbers in his diary, where his meetings with them were described. The killer moved in reverse order, attacking those Poro had written about. But why? What was the point? The hero hurried to check the previous entry. He wanted to find out who was next. And he froze in horror before Nana in the diary. Roika was mentioned. At that moment, Ruika was sitting by Kimura's bed, bored and thinking that Poro was worrying about Nana for nothing. She didn't notice a black, deformed paw approaching the window. A monster emerged from the broken glass. A huge, hideous creature slithered into the room. Ruika gestured to move away so as not to disturb the wounded man, and immediately attacked with flames. The monster flew out the window, but Ruika rushed after it and struck again with fire. She had never seen demons of this type. She pushed the creature into the ground, trying to minimize the damage. But she knew it wasn't enough. It wouldn't die that easily. She remembered Nana's words. The attacker was acting according to Poro's diary. Ruika didn't understand how she knew this, but Nana confessed. She had studied the diary down to every letter. It was frightening and disgusting. "I'm his fiancé, not you," Ruika objected. But now it was clear that the target was Poro himself. And the victims were chosen because of their connection to him. Nana asked Ruika to remain silent. Publicity would only bring pain. Although she didn't know who exactly was behind this, she saw it as a chance to get revenge. She would check on all the injured, convey their wishes, and try to get the truth. Ruika asked why she was sharing with her since she hated her. Nana didn't object. She really hated her, this vulgar, pathetic person. And she also knew that Ruika had once licked a cake wrapper. Ruika blushed. But they have one thing in common: their love for Poro-sama. And because of that, Nana is ready to trust her with a secret. Ruika looked at the creature and admitted, "It looks pitiful." In reality, it was difficult to fight her. Her magic was weak, her strength was not higher than 100%. But it seemed that it was just a wrapper for something worse. Ruika fought the creature with all her strength, not understanding how Nana could lose to such a weakling. Poro and his friends ran to the room, too late. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but everyone was staring at the hole in the wall. Hikaru assumed that the monster had attacked Ruika as planned. The force of the impact could have really destroyed the wall. Poro felt Ruika's residual magic, distant but very familiar. He realized that she had moved the fight away so as not to touch Kimura. He darted through the crowd in the corridor like lightning. There was no time to think, only to act. The others barely had time to look back. Poro had already disappeared. They realized that the hero had once again left them without warning. Meanwhile, Ruika was still holding back the monstrous creature, not understanding the reasons for its resilience. She was already exhausted, had used up a lot of magic, but it wasn't even burning. For any other demon, this would have been the end. The monster released vines and wrapped them around the girl's body. She realized she was trapped. Ruika's entire body went dark. The magic was gone. The flame was extinguished. Her strength was exhausted. The monster swung its spear to pierce her. Nana's words flashed through Ruika's mind. She was not going to give up. She grabbed the monster's head and said that her revenge would not be a cry into the void. A burst of Duhu's power shattered the silence. A bright light. An explosion. The monster fell, the shard of the spear still sticking out of its eye. With hatred, she pulled out the fragment and shouted towards the defeated enemy. She was also embarrassed by her extreme hunger, and this in front of some freak. But it seems he used the same technique as against Nana. But the victory was hers, and only she was a little happy when she felt a presence behind her. How was it still moving after she had torn its head off? She only managed to see the sharp spikes and Poro's scream, ordering him to get his paws off his bride. In an instant he stood before her, unfurled the demon aura, and stopped the flow of blood. I returned to her, apologized for being late, and asked how she was. Ruika smiled. She thought she was dying, but Poro told her to get ready. Before he could say anything, strange circles appeared around him, and everything changed. All sorts of strange objects flew out of the creature's guts. Among them, Ruika noticed something unusual. The small sphere almost touched the ground, but Ruika instantly grabbed it in mid-air. Looking closely, she realized it was an eye, but not an ordinary one. Poro guessed it was the eyeball of a monster, but Ruika called it divine, an instrument of exorcists. Such swords are no weaker than Poro's own weapons, so it's no wonder he hadn't heard of them. There are also those among humans who are on a par with demons. Exorcists do not use magic directly. They control it with needles, cards, or other objects. It is likely that this creature is just a puppet controlled by the real criminal. In other words, the real culprit is a human. 100 years ago, demons already met with exorcists. Ruika even had an acquaintance from that field. This criminal, having used the demon eye, could watch them all the time. And if he wore it himself, it meant he knew how to hide its presence. Poro was stunned by the thought. Looking at the monster, he realized something shocking. It was at this moment that the criminal realized that the heroes had almost solved the mystery, and the time had come to act. Everything was going according to plan. If there were no difficulties, it would be boring. He carved a pentagram on the hand of the bound Yuta, who was trying to call for help. Everything was going as it should. Not even Hikaru could have interfered. The maniac completed the drawing by carving a number into the skin. Poro suddenly snapped. He sensed that Yuta was in danger. Ruika wanted to go with him, but he refused. She had already expended too much energy. He couldn't let her risk her life again, an opponent stronger than any demon. She should rest and test the effects of the eye. Poro felt a powerful aura that was hard to miss. It was clearly coming from Hikaru. Realizing their location, Poro dashed forward like lightning. In a moment, he was standing in front of Hikaru, who was holding the bound Yuta. Hikaru smiled ominously, saying that this was what he expected from the threshold of the demon world. Poro wasn't going to listen. He rushed to attack, but he was stopped by an invisible barrier. Hikaru sighed. They said they didn't even let him finish a sentence. He placed his hand on Yuta's head and suggested that Poro listen to him. After all, no one wants to die without knowing why. He said he was just an ordinary exorcist. His fiery girlfriend, Ruika, had probably already told him everything. The mission of exorcists is to protect people and destroy demons. But to be honest, he just loved it. Killing demons, causing pain, that was what gave him true pleasure. Life without demons is much more pleasant, and it's also a profitable hobby, Hikaru admitted with pleasure. Before, he could only dream of killing the strongest demon. But a simple murder is too banal. So he decided to start with pain. With pain for those whom Poro valued, and he thought it was a brilliant plan. Poro himself allowed him to approach. Meanwhile, Hikaru watched as the hero gradually realized that his loved ones were the target. The greatest pleasure was seeing Poro's face, full of confusion. He wanted to see that torment again, and to do this, he put a knife to Yuta's throat. But Poro exploded in rage and attacked. The barrier cracked, and fragments dug into Poro's hand. Hikaru warned that the demons would not break through his defenses. The fragments pierced Poro's body, rushing all the way to his head. People created weapons against demons, because without magic they cannot be defeated. Self-defense, rituals, spells. All of this was born of human hatred accumulated over thousands of years. This is exactly what Hikaru took advantage of. He lifted Poro's head by the hair and smiled. saying that it was all just for fun. Finally, he advised me to remember everyone's faces from the diary. It would be the last memory before death. But suddenly a bright light flashed in front of Hikaru. It was Ruika. She was attacking the exorcist with pillars of fire. Hikaru was defending himself, outraged by her interference. She was furious. No one has the right to do that to her husband. Poro shouted for her to run away. He was too strong. But Hikaru shrugged. Any fire can be put out. Without emotion, he pierced her with a spear of light, through and through. Rika fainted, writhing in burning pain. Hikaru smiled. It was only level 10 magic. 8 holes in the heart were small things. And so that Yuta wouldn't interfere, Hikaru put an amulet on him and put him to sleep. Hikaru smiled. It was just the beginning. Poro was shocked, unable to accept Ruika's possible death. Losing consciousness, the hero fell asleep. Hikaru was glad. He had finally broken down. Now Poro lay in the center of the pentagram. His hand was burning, and he didn't immediately notice the cut on his palm. They were in an abandoned hospital, just like the one where the victims were lying. Hikaru had prepared everything in advance. A pentagram with the number 0 was drawn with his blood. It was this seal that activated the true magic. The victims, the numbers, the pages. It all came down to the awakening of the force, and Poro was to be the key. The other victims were just a cover. The real target was him. The hero's ears rang with tension. Demonic wings sprouted from his back, and spiked horns appeared on his head. A stream of power covered his body. This was the completed awakening. The same form that Poro had previously restrained. Now nothing would stop him. In this form, he could destroy a city, or the entire world. And Hikaru understood that perfectly well. According to his script, Poro was to destroy everything he loved, and unable to bear the guilt, ask for death himself. This was his ideal tragedy. When the hero almost lost himself, Yuta woke up. He saw that his friend had become a monster. Poro begged Hikaru to stop the ritual, but Hikaru only humiliatingly kicked him in the head. Hikaru insisted that the awakened demons were a threat to everything, and Poro no longer had a place in the human world. The diary, the friendship, the emotions, all of this, according to Hikaru, was just a stupid game. Poro finally snapped. His hand became like the paw of a beast, and his body was enveloped in black demonic fire. And although Hikaru expected Poro to destroy everything around him, the hero unexpectedly turned his power against the exorcist himself. The amulets didn't last a second. Poro destroyed them immediately, without even letting them activate. The hero hit so hard that Hikaru was pushed into the roof. Hikaru smiled. It was his strongest defense, but even that didn't help. In the end, Hikaru only wished for Poro to suffer. A fragile plea broke out from the crowd. Stop! But Poro no longer heard. The demon was about to destroy everything when Kimura, a student who had once studied under Poro, jumped on him. He reminded the teacher that strength wasn't the point. Yuta was surprised at how quickly Kimura came to his senses. The sacrifice for the ritual had already been made, so Kimura was able to wake up. The other friends also regained consciousness. Ruika threw a fiery lasso at Poro, and Nona tried to restrain him with chains of gluttony. Ruika screamed that she would not love a monster possessed by power and ordered him to come to his senses. Nona smiled. Only she had the right to kill him. Everyone was surprised that the fire demon was still standing after such wounds. Ruika reminded Nona who had healed her, and she replied that she had simply been asleep. If Poro finally fails, the world will perish. They urgently need to invent something. Before they had time, Poro released another burst of power. There was an explosion. The ground shook. Everyone fell. Hikaru looked at the mutilated bodies and smiled. The people were so pitiful. He was already reaching his ugly hand towards them when Yuta stopped him, holding out the diary. He looked his friend in the eye and said, "Stop there." Poro kept his diary carefully, so he was a good man, and they all knew it. Everyone fought not against him, but for him. Yuta admitted that he is happy that Poro is in this world. But Hikaru just smiled. It was all in vain. Poro was no longer human. He could not be stopped. But Yuta remembered. Poro came to the human world not for power, but to understand it. He handed him the diary. The demon's eyes trembled, and his hand unconsciously reached for the diary. Yuta smiled and whispered, "It's time to go home." The hero finally came to his senses. With a smile, he remembered what he wanted to call himself. Dawn. But Hikaru suddenly grabbed the knife and put it to Yuta's throat. If Poro lost control again. After all, a magic circle drawn once can be used many times. Even Hikaru had magic, albeit a meager amount. But the ritual he performed wore Poro out over and over again. One day his body simply wouldn't take it. Hikaru wanted to play a little more, but there was nothing left. And then Poro hit him with his signature blow. A blow that sweeps away both magic and all tricks. Hikaru just laughed and didn't believe in defeat. However, he fell, recognizing in his own way the stupidity of the situation. Poro didn't listen. He warned he wouldn't let anyone touch those he valued anymore. And he added, never again. Afterwards, he cried like a child, begging for forgiveness for having raised his hand against Utah. But his friend asked him not to blame himself. And so this bloody story ended. Since then, no one has seen Hikaru again. It was as if he didn't exist. Poro believed that their paths would never cross again. All the injured recovered, and school life returned to its usual joys. Kimura admired Poro, and even praised his horns. Yuta was amazed. Ruika dreamed of hugging the demon, and Nonna dreamed of killing him in this form. Toishi was nicknamed Dabachi, the most fearsome villain in the human world. Kei Kimura was also called Demon, and both were considered the strongest of humans. They were hot-tempered but kind, and friends of the main character. However, Poro had no idea what was happening to them today. He just watched them study the pile of books with a suspicious determination. Utah had a bandage on his forehead that read, "Unquestionable Victory." Yuta tried to stay awake, sipping the strange liquid from the bottle. Kimura gritted his teeth, not understanding anything from the pages. They looked more terrifying than usual. Poro hoped they weren't angry, but it was strange. They were just reading books. Jonah was smart, but he would fall asleep on the first page. He had to drink coffee constantly to keep from falling asleep. And Kimura, he was, to put it mildly, no genius. His brain would boil just by looking at the letters. He would even read a book upside down. Poro didn't understand what was driving them. And just then, a girl entered the classroom. She brought her favorite books. She couldn't take any more. They were heavy. But she assured me that they were very interesting. Smiling, she asked me to read them. The guys perked up, greeting Fujiwara-senpai, and Poro had no idea who she was. Suara promised to bring more books if they liked them. Tanya readily agreed, and the girl laughed and apologized for only talking about books. She didn't have any friends who liked to read before. That made her truly happy. She promised to wait for their impressions and after saying goodbye, left. Kimura and Yuta saw her off with dreamy looks. Poro didn't believe they were in love, but the boys told him to keep quiet. It was Fujiwara from the 3rd grade, a librarian and a bookworm. Kimura had fallen in love with her yesterday when he saw her in the hallway. And the horoscope had just promised a fateful meeting. Although Poro thought they were making things difficult. The guys lied that they read 100 or even 1,000 pages a day. The girl was fascinated, and Poro wondered, why lie? The argument between Kimura and Kimura escalated, with each of them considering themselves worthy of meeting senpai. Poro didn't know where to turn. One of them fainted. Poro understood. This is it. The power of love. Going to a bookstore with friends is a great idea. It's fun on your own, but it's better with company. The boys were barely able to stand, but they still accompanied the girl. Poro, unlike them, was not exhausted. Although Yuta and Kimura said they were going with her, they actually knew nothing about books. And they asked Poro to explain, but he himself understood little about this world. Nearby, familiar hooligans appeared. They didn't expect those two to know how to read, and to have such a cute girl with them. Fujiwara showed Yuta a Russian novel, and he was embarrassed, realizing he had overdone it. And Poro noticed a familiar title on the shelf. Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace is a masterpiece with 500 characters. Poro knew it was a classic. Yuta should have known about this book, but it was obvious he hadn't read it. He answered evasively, but the girl agreed. The main thing in the book was the anti-war idea. Poro was amazed. Could words have such power? Fujiwara brought Kimura his favorite book, a novel by Dazai Osamu. She asked him which episode he liked the most. Kimura broke out in a sweat. The work was based on ancient Greek myths and was even part of the school curriculum. In a panic, Kimura remembered something about a rabid cat fighting demons. The girl laughed. She didn't remember such a moment. Poro understood. He had simply guessed, and Kimura had lied. Both boys fainted from shame right at the girl's feet. Poro pulled them aside and asked Fujiwara to wait a moment. This book world was clearly not for them. While Poro was bringing his friends back to their senses, 2 suspicious boys approached Fujiwara. Poro warned his friends. If they continued like this, the books would simply kill them. But Kimura stood his ground. A real man doesn't give up. Poro reminded them that they had already fallen when they lied to her. Kimura was filled with energy again and exclaimed that it wasn't all over yet. He still had strength left. Poro was worried that if he won, he would be even worse off. Kimura stubbornly declared that Shinpai would be his because he had already gone too far. Poro didn't know what to do with them. When they came out of the bathroom, they heard Fujiwara asking them not to touch her. But the boys around her only mocked her, trying to humiliate her. They mocked her friends as demons and debauchers, saying that books were not for them. It was obvious that they were just teasing her. Kimura was furious that these guys had humiliated her, but Fuji was not fazed. She replied that even if what they said was true, the fact that they wanted to read meant a lot. She was happy even for that. Her answer shocked everyone, including Kimura and Yuta. One of the boys grabbed her hand, called her pretty, and added that she had forgotten about people because of her books. He suggested entertainment instead of reading. The girl demanded to let her go. At that moment, Kimura and Yuta intervened and swung a punch at the offenders. Both villains fell to the floor with a thud. Fuji thanked her for her help, and the boys apologized to her. They admitted everything those guys said was true. They really didn't read the books. But the girl didn't see a problem with that. She smiled sincerely and said that it was great. Now they would love them. Kimura almost burst into tears with emotion. But Fuji set a condition. No more essays on war and peace or similar books. Meanwhile, the attackers hid behind the shelves and deliberately knocked over a bookcase directly onto Fuji. Poro managed to pick up both the girl and the shelf, and even arranged the books in piles. He praised the boys for their honesty and courage. Kimura and Yuta couldn't hide their admiration for their teacher. Fuji was so impressed that she couldn't take her eyes off Poro. She covered her mouth with her hands, and Poro, smiling, said he was glad she was okay. Kimura and Yuta noticed something had changed. It was clear that Poro had won this battle not with strength, but with kindness. He helped the girl and put the shelf back in place. Later, at Udo's house, Poro was getting to know the computer. Suddenly the screen lit up, and a message about a virus appeared. He didn't understand how this could have happened, as he was just browsing the internet. A button called Destroy Virus appeared on the screen, and Poro, without hesitation, pressed it. But instead, a window popped up thanking him for buying the antivirus. For 1 billion yen. He was offered to transfer the money to the specified card. Poro got nervous. He couldn't believe it had happened, because he had simply clicked Remove Virus. He decided to cancel the purchase, and the system suggested he call a certain number. Without hesitation, Poro dialed it. Poro called VT's help desk, and politely explained, he pressed the wrong button, accidentally bought antivirus, and wants to cancel the purchase. The operator confirmed the cancellation, but added, the fine was 5 billion yen. Poro swallowed in shock. The hero admitted that he didn't have that kind of money. The operator threatened, without payment, it would be considered a breach of contract. Poro begged to settle the matter peacefully, but the interlocutor abruptly changed his tone. The voice threatened to kill him if he didn't pay. They added that they knew his name and address, so they would come to find out everything. Moreover, thanks to the virus, they can already see how much money is in his account. Poros had an idea. Kimura and Yuta were only surprised when Poro suddenly hung up the phone. And the wall of the building exploded. The crooks fell to the floor. One stood up, thinking it was the police, but saw a young demon. Poro apologized, saying he got a little excited and broke through the wall. He showed his almost empty wallet. He had bought too many games yesterday, so he would pay for it later. He handed the rest of the money to the scammers, and they, trembling, only nodded. Poro sighed. Their fraud was exposed. The leader operator got down on his knees and promised never to do that again. It turned out that this was a simple guy named Taro, who was forced to fake calls. He dreamed of becoming a guitarist, but got caught up in a criminal scheme. Taro understood. There was no other way out, but Poro was not going to finish him off. The young man admitted that the bosses were holding all the data on the hook. It was impossible to escape. Poro listened sympathetically. The crooks are strong, but not as scary as demons, Taro assured. But still, Poro will have to pay. After these words, the hero cried, and Taro realized that the monster turned out to be very sensitive. Poro called him poor guy and sympathized. Taro burst into tears in response, thanking him for understanding. The hero assured, people even worse than demons remain people, if you sincerely tell the truth. Taro didn't understand anything, but nodded. At that moment the door flew open. The real boss of the gang appeared. He was holding a rare munchkin kitten in his smelly jacket. He saw only a trembling Taro and a stranger, Poro. Noticing that the demon had disappeared, he was confused. Poro was already standing next to him, stroking the cat. He politely apologized for the intrusion and asked if he was the boss here, while Taro just blinked in confusion. Bodo was not used to having his debts forgiven, so the story of the peaceful demon seemed like complete nonsense to Taro. Poro, smiling, asked for a small favor, but Bodo ordered the men to finish off the impudent man. The guard hit Poro on the head, and immediately received the same bloody salute in return. Takatora fainted. A munchkin kitten crawled out from under his jacket. Poro leaned towards the animal. "Are you okay?" A deathly silence reigned around. The crooks were scared. They decided to run away and urgently call Bodo-san himself, which made Taro tremble. Taro tugged Poro by the shoulder. "We are doomed. If we stay, they will kill us." But the demon insisted. "Let's come to an understanding first." The scammers rushed to the head of the UKMA telephone mafia. "He will probably be furious if he finds out about the blockage." Poro suddenly exclaimed, "Then let's talk to Bodo himself." Taro of the Otets. "This is madness." The sixes reported to the boss. Their telephone boy had brought someone who had killed Takatora. Bodo, painting his nails, just smiled. "Catch him. We'll arrange a spectacular dismemberment." He was admiring his manicure when the wall exploded. Poro appeared in the office. The demon politely called him Mr. Bodo. The guards tried in vain to detain the guest. Bodo is amazed. The door is made of armored steel, and the guy is smiling. Poro assures him he came to talk, not to kill. Taro almost faints. Poro wanted to discuss the phone scams, but first asked Taro to let him go. Bodo asked in shock, "Just let it go?" Poro nodded. The guy's dream is to become a guitarist. The boss thought Poro was a fool for believing such stories. The answer was a bullet fired by Bodo directly into the demon's face. The demon merely caught it with its teeth. Poro spat the bullet on the floor. Words are a chance. Not everyone has one. Everyone froze. Bodo and his henchmen turned pale. A monster eating bullets was in front of them. Taro flinched, but Poro only smiled. "Shall we make a deal?" A few days later, the police announced that the largest call center for scammers had been shut down. In the report, Bodo stated, "Some guy did it." That same day, Taro took out his 2-year-old guitar. "Maybe I'll really learn to play in Tokyo." And Poro checked every call for 3 more days, afraid of new scammers. When Yuta called, he thought it was another scammer. But Yuta had no idea what was going on. Poro, the demon prince, raced with all his might. The children were fugitives, and he himself was a helpless nanny. "Yuta, the baby is also barefoot!" Poro shouted at him to stop, but the little one only ran faster. It all started earlier. 2 familiar demons tried to defeat him again. They boasted that today they would definitely destroy the prince and become kings. Kimura showed them his middle finger, and Poro sighed. Incorrigible. The demons waved but assured this time everything would work out. They cast the Frog of Youth on him, a spell that returns the victim to childhood. Poro fought off the frog, but didn't notice how it hit his friends. An explosion, and his entire company turned into children. He picked up tiny Yuta, a real baby with big eyes. Behind him, a demon screamed. The spell broke in response. He grabbed his partner and the frog and ran away, threatening, "After sleep, everything will be over." Poro understood. We just need to wait until the kids fall asleep. Simple as that, or not. The book advises to exhaust the children and put them to bed. So he started active games. But the babies didn't even think about napping. The chaos only grew. Kimura the child copied Yuta and smashed the furniture. Poro begged, "Stop!" And on the other side, little Ruika was happily playing with fireballs. The toys had already been bought, but nothing was working. Poro realized that he had to wait for natural fatigue. He felt for the first time how difficult it was for people to raise children. In the demon world, they were simply thrown off a mountain. Let them survive. He was wondering why people would voluntarily go through such torture. When Kimura crawled up and asked for a fairy tale. A brutal book hater asks to read. Poro's heart sank, but he opened the book and began to read, trying not to think about his own childhood, and not to involve the little ones in demonic hobbies. Poro's mother once said that feeding and rocking children is a human weakness. But Poro himself saw other values in it, not just strength. He smiled, because now he understood. Caring is also strength. And that was her true maternal duty. Kimura, listening to the tale, began to rub his eyes. Sleep was near. But suddenly, mischievous footsteps sounded behind him. Kid Utah decided to tease Kimura and threw water ships, balls filled with water. The bullets rained down on Poro and Kimura. Utah laughed. Kimura was no longer asleep. The chase began. Kimura rushed after Utah, and Poro sighed. Sleep was postponed again. Behind him, the girl's childish cries were heard. Nana and baby Ruika started a power duel. It scared even the demon nanny. The children were fighting like kittens. Poro tried his best to keep them apart. We need a place to release our energy. Quickly! Poro remembered the playground and led everyone there. The kids were delighted. Ruika rushed onto the slide. Yuta grabbed the swing. The playground is wide. The children are busy. The plan worked. On the bench, the mothers whispered, "It must be the older brother." Suddenly, a chubby boy took the doll from the girl. He held it high, laughing. He got fed up. He pushed the girl, threw the doll. The mother rushed to comfort her daughter, but the mischievous boy climbed into the sandbox and trampled the castle of Kimura and the other children. The children cried, but Kimura wasn't scared. He grabbed the troublemaker by the shirt. Poro hurried to stop him, but the fat man's mother slapped Kimura in the back of the head. "Don't touch my son!" Poro was stunned. Her boy was hurting others. But the woman stood her ground. "I have to protect the child," Poro calmly explained. "A mother's duty is to both protect and teach what is good and what is not." She didn't understand, but the other parents agreed and supported the demon teacher. "Taka-chan never heard any criticism and grew up spoiled," one of the mothers remarked. But the boy's mother just disappeared. While the baby was bawling into his mother's skirt, Kimura came over and extended a hand of reconciliation. "Children's quarrels teach us to make up quickly." Poro smiled. Lesson learned. Kimura extended not only his hand but also a shovel and a bucket to build a castle together. Mother apologized to Poro, agreeing. Both of them had something to learn. In the evening, all the little ones finally fell asleep. Poro, exhausted, carried them home on his back and enjoyed the silence. The children seemed strange creatures, but strangely enough, they didn't annoy him. He wondered. Perhaps his mother had once felt the same way. In the morning, the teenage friends woke up in Yuta's house. Where did the toys come from? No one remembered anything. Poro smiled in his sleep. In another world, the demons Fustel and Rai were still begging their partner to sleep to break the spell. The Tenshai Temple Festival was approaching. Ruika tried on the yukata, blushing. Did it really suit her? Her heart was pounding. Poro appeared with a poster. "Tomorrow we'll go together." "A festival? There's no killing there." She waved it off. Poro smiled. "See you tomorrow," and left, even though Ruika formally refused. The friends jumped up. "See you later." Fireworks, a kiss. Ruika was speechless. They teased her until she was as red as a tomato. "You're a funny monkey," the girls laughed. One of them gave her a spare yukata. Looking at herself in the mirror, Ruika didn't recognize herself. And for some reason she agreed. Walking down the alley, she noticed that there were only couples around. What did Poro want? Her imagination painted romantic scenes with fireworks. In his imagination, he stroked her head. "The salute is beautiful, but you are more beautiful." Ruika pursed her cheeks in shame. And then Poro himself emerged from the crowd. He was also wearing a yukata. Udo had borrowed it. He saw that Ruika was shivering. "Are you cold?" No, your feet are cottony," she stammered. Poro thanked him for his help in researching human customs. It turned out that Yuta and Kimura were busy, so he invited her. "Festivals are a combination of culture and faith. I'll write everything down in my diary," he said proudly. He showed a caramelized apple. "Even here is the wisdom of the people." Ruika was offended. How could one be so tactless? She grumbled that at festivals, boys and girls usually get closer. Poro nodded and moved on. Ruika stopped him. "I remembered my friend's advice. Tell me you're afraid of getting lost, and take my hand." She held out her trembling hand and whispered timidly, "I might get lost in the crowd." Ruika was so nervous that, while reaching out, she accidentally bumped into a burly man and fell. "Let's hold hands so we don't get lost," she whispered. Behind her, her uncle grumbled as if he had been burned with lava. Poro picked up the grunt, who groaned, "It's like a truck ran over him." The demon only smiled. "You haven't seen a crowd of demons yet." Ruika almost burst into tears. For the first time, she hated her own power. Then Poro gently took her by the elbow. "Let's think about the others, too. It's safer that way." She stared at him. Did he understand what the girl was feeling? Probably not. To show her emotions, Ruika took him to the shooting range. Her friends advised, distract him. She took the gun, missed. She pretended to be unlucky. Poro calculates the distance, resistance, even the magic charge. Without it, he says, the ball won't reach its destination. He fires, catching the bullet with a gust of wind magic. Ruika's hair is thrown back, ricochet, and the bullet blows away all the prizes. The grandfather from the shooting range is shocked. One shot, an empty shelf. The crowd applauds, and Ruika goes crazy with delight and jealousy. She grumbles that she should have made such an impression. Poro returns all the winnings. He is more interested in cotton candy, a cloud of sugar. Ruika is wary. Apologies are heard somewhere nearby. Kimura the child grabbed a passerby who had accidentally touched him. The boy apologized, but Kimura held on tightly. Seeing Poro, Kimura let the man go. I'll show the rule breakers, he smiled. The poor man was trembling in fear nearby. Kimura said that Yuta was here somewhere. He invited her to play with the goldfish. Poro beamed and led Ruika to the pool. She wondered if she could catch the fish with a thin paper net. Her friends advised her to lure the guy a little. Ruika straightened up so that the yukata emphasized her figure. Her friends scolded her. Don't overdo it. But the girl decided to take a chance. Be careful, Poro warned. And just then, the fish jumped out. Right into her yukata. Ruika screamed. She fell down and laughed from the tickling, while the boys blinked in surprise. Then they went for a walk. Poro was delighted with the variety of fun, and Ruika was frowning. Failure upon failure. The demon asks about the creepy mask on her head. The girl thinks in fear, isn't it really appropriate? Her friends said that it was wee, but Poro just doesn't understand why the mask is needed. Ruika covers her head with her hands. Failure. Then Poro notices Yuta and rushes towards him, leaving Ruika alone. Yuta is happy. The yukata suits you. Poro, looking at the cotton wool. It's like a cloud has been born. People eat these sweet clouds. Yuta laughs. Yuta asked Poro where Ruika was. We were together. The demon was surprised and went to look for him, grabbing the package of fluffy cotton wool that Yuta had given him. Meanwhile, Ruika wandered through the crowd. You can't change anything, she sighed. But that's not all. Her mission in life is supposedly to give birth to a powerful child. And Poro again fails to see her feelings. When the boys invited her to set off fireworks, Ruika, crying, almost pushed them into the ground. It's a good thing this isn't a real date, she muttered. Until the loser demons from the best yakisoba in hell, Stall screamed. Ruika stopped the familiar rogue demons with an icy gaze. They were stunned. She bought some yakisoba and beer. The demons objected. You're a schoolgirl. But Ruika ordered not to cosplay people and poured more. Poro heard the commotion. Ruika had already drunk a good 100 mugs and was threatening to burn down the tavern. The demons begged her to stop. Poro picked up the girl in his arms. She was indignant. Your diary is more important than me. The demons just threw up their hands. Evening. They sat on the steps and watched the fireworks. Beautiful. Poro smiled. Ruika grumbled that he didn't care about the holiday or her. She looked down. Why am I here? And just then Poro leaned in, a soft, light kiss. That's what they do at festivals, right? He explained confusedly. Ruika froze, as if her soul had left her body. Now I can die, she whispered. Everyone in the city admired the fireworks. Even Nona's godbrother had drawn the lottery number 1, which wasn't there. Meanwhile, in the demon world, there was a strange order. The demons behaved almost like humans. Some rushed to school, some listened to a new hit, some praised the gates of hell in France. No one would believe it. Almost no bloody battles. Since the new Demon King abolished the power ratings 3 years ago, life became even more fun. That was Poro's dream. The demon minister requested approval of traffic lights and the budget for the baseball stadium. Store revenues tripled. Amazon delivery was also brought in. The Poro King signed the papers with tears. I can't do this anymore. Every day was just work, no time for fun or sleep. He begged for a break, but the long-eared secretary kept jumping up and down with new requests. Since he returned from the human world, reforms have changed everything. Strength is no longer the main thing. Values have appeared. If you want to rest, you can die, the secretary joked. Poro blurted out, this is a real black company. Only demons instead of people. Poro clutched his head. The diary entries were 3 years out of date, and his problems were multiplying. He longed for the quiet human days. And at that moment, the wall burst out. Piraku's 2-year-old son jumped on him, knocking his father off his feet. "Dad, play!" The ministers rushed in after him. "Your Majesty, the prince has run away again!" But the little boy waved them away. 100 guardian demons lay in a heap. Piraku proved to be extremely strong. Poro picked up the little one. "Who did you inherit this power from?" Piraku tugged at his father's cheek. The father apologized. He had a lot of work to do now. "Play with the others, please." But tears flashed in the prince's eyes. In a second, the palace turned into ruins. Piraku started crying. Poro chased after his son, ministers with bundles of documents. After Poro, signatures, construction of the castle. The explosion shook the capital. The demons thought it was an earthquake. In fact, it was the wailing of a prince capable of leveling a city to the ground. Somewhere nearby, Fu and Paradise were opening a fair. Their travel notes on the human world sold 10 billion copies. Reporters asked about plans. Authors praised their commercial genius and Nobel Prize in literature. They confessed. They were inspired by the tales of the reformer king about the beauty of the human world. They had no time to finish when Piraku demolished their pavilion with one blow. The writers found themselves in ruins. Meanwhile, Ruika woke up early. She wanted to buy fresh ribeye for the sashimi monster. Hearing Poro's cry, "Stop, Piraku!" The kid was running straight at her. Ruika spread her arms. "To Mom!" Piraku snapped. But in her arms, he instantly calmed down. "It's amazing how he puts up with me. Real motherhood," she smiled. The demonic officials grabbed Poro. "Get to work!" and pressed him down with their shoulders. Terrible motivation methods. The king grumbled, and Ruika, holding her son, laughed. Absolute horror. Demo chaos raged around. Ruika sighed. "He needs to change his diaper. He'll flood everything again." The officials didn't care. They shoved mountains of papers at Poro for him to sign, even in the midst of the child apocalypse. The reformer king clutched his head. The demons were serious. After a chaotic day, Poro collapsed onto his bed in the Ruika. Ruika was happy. The palace was restored in a matter of seconds. He has a great job and a family, but the memories of his quiet human days are painful. He looked at the photo with his friends in his mind. Ruika stuck a piece of paper on his forehead. "Surprise," she smiled. It was a ticket to the human world. She promised not to tell anyone and winked. "Sometimes you need to rest." Poro's hands trembled. He hugged his wife with tears. "I love you." Ruika replied in the same way, regretting that they were not alone. The king left matters to his subordinates and rushed into the world of men. 3 years for demons is a moment. For men is an eternity, he worried, wondering if his friends had forgotten. At the station, he was met by the god Kamui and the angel Nona. Kamui jokingly checked his ticket. Nona winked. "We'll have lunch together." Poro is stunned. "Why are they here?" Kamui replied, "Everyone has their reasons." "What are yours?" Nona hugged him and suggested that he run away to true love. But Poro just disappeared. Kamui pulled out his phone to send a photo to Ruika. Poro forbade him. This could be deadly. God admitted. At first he thought Poro was crazy with the dream of changing demons, but he did the impossible. "You're cool," Kamui said. "We came to say it in person." Poro was confused by the compliment. "Isn't that flattery?" he muttered. Kamui grabbed him by the collar, opened the train window and pointed down. "Look, it's already there," and he simply threw Poro out of the car. "Say hello!" Nonna was worried, but her brother God winked. "I'm a god. Things will happen where they need to." At school, Yuta was sitting at his desk and suddenly looked up, and Poro, breaking through the roof, landed right in the center of the auditorium, leaving a huge hole. The looks and exclamations were painfully piercing. He longed to find friends. And then he heard footsteps. Kimura hugged his teacher tearfully. "It's been so long since we've seen each other." Yuta approached silently. Kimura let go, and Yuta smiled. "Well, you're destroying the ceiling as usual." Poro was embarrassed, but his heart sang. As he stood up, he accidentally dropped his diary. A photograph of 3 old friends slipped out of it, and Poro realized the human world had finally waited for him.